So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome everyone for this Healthy Climate Initiative webinar. And today we are going to talk about what Healthy Climate Initiative is about, what is our vision, what is our objective, what is our mission. Till now we have hosted a few webinars uh, focusing on different topics, but today we have HCI founder uh, Soumitra Das with us. Let me quickly introduce Soumitra as well as our moderator Arushi. So Soumitra Das is the executive director of the Healthy Climate Initiative, which he co-founded with a vision to help regenerate a healthy climate and make it safer for future generations. An engineer by training, he brings both technical expertise and business experience to his work. Soumitra leads global and national campaigns, field trials for glacial preservation in the Himalayas, and policy advocacy to catalyze urgent science-based responses to climate change. He holds a PhD in electrical engineering from George Mason University and an MBA from the Wharton School. Welcome, Soumitra.
Thank
Uh,
you for the great introduction.
Arushi Shah is the moderator for today. Arushi is an incoming graduate student of the Goldman School of Public Policy with a focus on climate policy in the Global South. She has previously worked with Silver Lining, a nonprofit advancing research and policy on climate risk and interventions, and is currently engaged in the climate philanthropy space in India. As you are all aware, we have the climate negotiations currently underway in Bonn, the subsidiary body's 62nd edition of the talks. And yesterday, one of the things that was mentioned by the IPCC was that they are working on a policy document to address the urgent requirements, including new developments like climate interventions. So maybe that is something that we can look forward to. So looking forward to a great interactions between Soumitra and Arushi. And please post your questions in the chat and the Q or the Q&A. And we hope to make this interactive towards the end. Thank you very much.
So
Arushi.
the for-
Go ahead.
so the format is that first I will make presentation for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then there will be moderated Q&A for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then 15 minutes for the open questions from the audience, and then we will wrap up. So starting with climate crisis and our plan for India. So let us look into what makes India's situation so difficult, complex. It's extremely vulnerable to climate change. It's globally sixth in terms of vulnerability to extreme weather. Think about this, 1.4 billion population in one third of US size of the US. So it's like 12 times more density. Then you have the coastal line that 250 million people live close to within 50 kilometers of coastlines. So as sea level rising, they are risking of getting flooded, and we see a migration pattern from those areas. On the top, in the north, you have Himalayas, and the melting of those glaciers are causing flooding and also water crisis at the same time. So that makes the situation very difficult. You have all the problems, and at the same time, you have extreme heat. Being close to equator, you are experiencing extreme heat. So some of the specifics I want to go over, that heat waves and scorching heat waves are becoming more frequent and intense. If you think about last year, we have 37 cities across 6 states exceeded 45 degrees Celsius. And with humidity, which is very high in those cities, you can feel the temperatures like 55 degrees Celsius, even higher. And when you think about 90% people do not have air conditioning at home, the situation is very deadly. So let me give you an example of my own experience. I go to India very often. And last year in April, when I went to India, I was traveling from a train station called Howrah. It's one of the busiest train station in India. About 1 million people pass through this train station every day. I never have found in my whole life that station is empty. There are lots of people all the time. That particular day in April last year, temperature was 42 degrees Celsius. It was empty. The train station was empty. There were very few people working. It's so hot, it was very difficult to stand and work in that station. And think about 70% of workforce. Most of the people are engaged in physical labor like street vending, agriculture, and construction, and like that. Think about the productivity and the health effect of those people. And what we find that wet bulb temperature in many cities is about crossing 30 degrees Celsius in many cities. This is very deadly. Think about what would happen if the wet bulb temperature exceed 35 degrees Celsius, which is the survivability limit of human being. So just few pictures. Delhi, 49.1 degrees Celsius last year recorded. Ahmedabad, again last year, the poll workers, 77 people died. This came from 2022. The lead author of India, Chandni Singh, that you can adapt so much. This heat wave is testing the limits of human survivability. That's what I was referring to, that you are getting into that survival limit of 35 degrees Celsius of wet bulb temperature approaching there. This is a very, deadly graphic. If you can see that current condition, the black zones, you see those are uninhabitable zones because of this wet bulb temperature, the hot situation. But what would happen in 2070? That you can see a large part of India is becoming uninhabitable. And I think 2070 is a bit conservative. If I think about 31 degrees Celsius in many cities, and the large cities like Kolkata, Mumbai, and Chennai. Last year, Chennai was wet bulb temperature recorded 32 degrees Celsius. In some parts in India, Balashore in Odisha, and in some other place in Gujarat, is 34.6 degrees Celsius, pretty close. So I think, it could be even, earlier than 2070. So that's one part of the heat wave you can see. And as I said, that you have in the north, you have the glaciers, and that is causing huge problems for billions of people. When the glacier melts, what used to happen, that those glaciers would melt in a controlled fashion. In summer, we'd get the more water, it's good for the irrigation, and the rivers were capable to carry those water. Now what is happening, you have a sudden rush of water, a huge amount of water coming, and that is causing flood in the downstream. And on the upstream near the Himalayas, you get water crisis. As the glacier receding, the villages that used to depend on the water from those glaciers do not have the water. So the people have to leave those villages or the cities. If you type ghost villages, you'll find many parts of the northern India, those villages are empty. So as the glacial is melting, you are seeing sea level rising. And again, sea level rise that could inundate many big cities in India. And here you see Kolkata and Mumbai. They are 20 million people each, but the whole coastline, as I said, 250 million people living in 50 kilometers, within 50 kilometers of coastline are at risk. And 2070, in other findings, studies show it's 2070 is too far. It's 2050. Kolkata, Mumbai, you can see, are inundated with water. It could be even unlivable. You also see rain bombs. Rain bombs, these are the terms, the new terms we are understanding these days. As the temperature increasing, you know that per degree Celsius, the moisture content in the atmosphere increases by 7%. So we see that suddenly in the monsoon time, that a gush of water comes, a huge amount of water, and then you don't see rain for a while. And again, you see a huge amount of water. In the past, the monsoon, what you used to see, that you have a controlled rain, good for the agriculture, and we could manage that. Now, certain amount of rain bombs is happening, certain of water, and then no water for a while. What we see the problem with the agriculture, it's inundating the cities and flooding the cities because the cities' infrastructure and the rivers are not capable to manage that amount of sudden gush of water. So this brings to the question of why this is happening, and I will not take a whole lot of time on this, but one way to think about that what is causing this climate change. You get the sunlight, and that is your source of energy, solar energy. And if the solar energy, and then you get reflected back. If the incoming energy and outgoing energy are same, then you get a stable temperature, and 15 degrees Celsius, I think, has been around for millennia. Now, if the incoming energy is greater than your outgoing energy, that means they are getting absorbed, then your Earth, the planet, will get warmer. And it will be cooler if it is other way around. Now, what we're finding, the scientists are finding that energy imbalance is 1 watt per meter square. And in fact, it is increasing. And if you translate 1 watt per meter square, what it means that you have about 700,000 Hiroshima-sized atom bombs exploding every 24 hours. Think about this. Just take a moment to think about 700 atom bombs are getting exploded every 24 hours. What kind of damages that it cause? And it is increasing. So it is now 1.23 watts per meter square. So 20-30% more. That means more than a million atom bombs are getting exploded. So, that brings to the solution. We got to decarbonize. No question about that. But we have to be honest at the same time. If you look at this chart, CO2 from 1960 has been increasing. Even after 2015, the Paris Climate Agreement, we decided to reduce emission. We have not done so, except during the pandemic period. You see the dip, that is the time we had that less emission. So we have to be honest, it is difficult. I think from India, they are doing their best to move to solar there, but still it is challenging. And India and China both placed net zero by 2070, 2060. And, famous scientist, climate scientist Jim Hansen is predicting 2 degrees Celsius by 2040. So we understand net zero emissions and sequestering carbon dioxide below 350 parts per million, even better 300 parts per million, are the permanent solution. But can you do that in time? And by the time you do it, situation could be catastrophic. So our proposal is that deep, rapid decarbonization, that is something we have to do. But in the meantime, we need to buy time. And we deploy solutions to protect people from extreme heat. There are a lot of solutions out there. We need to take a look at that. And we got to be ready if the situation like the million people mass casualty, million people dying on the street, if the temperature, wet bulb temperature exceeds to the 35 degrees Celsius, but there is human survivability. People cannot leave, even the healthy people cannot leave. So for that situation, we need to do accelerate research and readiness for large-scale sunlight reflection methods. And just give you a quick background, sunlight reflection methods. Sometimes people call that solar reflection methods. It's basically your energy you are getting from sunlight, and you're reflecting some of it back. There is different ways you can do. You can do it locally, you can do it regionally, and you can do global cooling. And some of them, ideas are ready for deployment, and some are quite far. But we need to have some stopgap measures to stop the bleeding. So, for example,
ভালো বুঝলাম কালকে কখন আসবেন?
Can you please mute up? Okay. So local interventions, like you can put aluminum foil or white paint to reflect some of the sunlight, and it shows that MERS, there is an organization, they are doing this work in Africa, in India, putting on the houses or schools that do not have air conditioning, and put aluminum foil type thing that can reflect sunlight and have the potential of lowering the temperature by 7 to 9 degrees Celsius. Then you have large-scale marine cloud brightening solution where you can put salt water, seawater, and brighten the cloud, and that can reflect sunlight. Need research on that, but has some promising solution. And in a very large scale, that you should be ready for planetary cooling by putting sulfur dioxide across the Earth in the stratospheric level, which is called stratospheric aerosol injection. So these are the techniques that we need to look into this. invest in research, create governance framework, and be ready for deployment. So we have only 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I think I crossed the time. So thank you for your attention. I'll let it pass the mic to Arushi, please. Arushi.
Yeah, thank you, Soumitra, for really laying out the science and the urgency of the problem so well. I think we're all aware that our climate system is reaching, tipping points that are points of irreversible return, and we're already seeing those impacts across India of extreme weather. Um, and I also want to emphasize that, even if we drastically cut emissions starting today, we're already seeing there's already enough carbon dioxide in our atmosphere that countries like India going to continue to see worsening climate impacts over the next few decades. So I think this dialogue is both extremely timely, but also extremely necessary. And, despite everything that we're seeing happening in our country, in terms of climate intervention, there's very limited engagement in, the research, the governance, and also just general like public discourse around this topic. And if we also take a step back and place this in the context of India's broad priorities, India's rightfully extremely focused on development. And that includes, focus on education, healthcare, infrastructure, job creation. I think that's where the current priorities are, both within the climate space and outside. So, keeping that in mind, Samantha, what do you foresee as some of the challenges, both in terms of like scientific challenges, political challenges, and social challenges of advancing research on climate interventions in India?
So one of the biggest challenges, what I find, the widespread lack of awareness, even among the educated circles. I have spoken with, all people of all across life, and there is very little understanding the scale of climate threat we face today, let alone the concept of climate intervention as a response. There is also narrative gap. The most public discourse is still focused on long-term decarbonization, rightfully so. We have to be done. But we need to also be aware of that what is going to happen 10 to 15 years from now, that it's a situation that's going to be a very catastrophic situation, but that awareness is not there. And when I talk to the people in IIT, IIC, top science agencies, barely engaged in research and development of climate intervention. So glacier protection, very little research and funding is there. So this is a huge challenge because of the lack of widespread awareness. And that's what HCI, as we are trying to create this awareness, engaging universities, colleges, and trials, workshops, webinars. We're trying to create that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, in terms of institutional capacity as well, I think there's also a lack of funding for a lot of this research. And as in addition to that, I think there's also a lack of, accurate data as well as yeah, just a lot of, I think there needs to be a lot of capacity building that needs to be done in this space, both by governments and by institutions. But what do you see the role of government in helping some of those institutions build that capacity? And within institutions, if we have any members of institutions, what can institutions do, academic institutions across the country that have abundant talent? How can they like take this dialogue forward?
So government has a big role to play here. National government, state governments, as well as the local governments. They have a big role. And think about this way that we have our IITs and ISC and we have best talented and great universities across in the world. And definitely, what is lacking today is sense of urgency from the government. What government can do is that they provide a priority, create a mission, provide that mission to the universities and engage, allocate the funding to the research. It's not the funding to create, research for the sake of research. You have to have a mission-driven research. You have to goal that's what we want to be, let us say 10 years from now. And how do I get there? What kind of research we need to get there? And that sense of urgency, that policy framework has to come from the government, and that is lacking today.
How do you foresee some of that, where within the Indian government do you foresee some of that policy being developed, or where is there room within the government's current, research programs for some of this kind of research?
Frankly speaking, that I have not come across that anywhere in the government involved in climate intervention research. I have talked to places, like Indian Institute of Science and Terry. I noticed that they are engaged some sort of a certain modeling type work, but deep core research I have not come across anyway. I have been to IITs also. I have not come across that, any level of research that would get us to the point that we should be ready. That's a huge lack of funding, support, and initiative from the top. And this is what we are trying to do, as HCI, to bring attention that the sense of urgency, that's through our workshops, through our policy briefing to the members of the parliament, that sense of urgency and need for allocation of fund, R&D, and there are solutions, but we need to adapt to the local contextual solutions for India. That's what we are trying to do from HCI.
Speaking of your engagement, both across the policy space and in trying to advance research through academic institutions, in some of these conversations you're having. So I think, HCI is one of the very, very early organizations in the space that's trying to advance, work on this. In terms of this, since it's such a nascent field, globally, but also I think specifically in India, how have you been able to navigate some of like the narrative building around these technologies that sometimes can like be feared and raise misconceptions when spoken about? So how have you been able to navigate that dialogue and try to make sure that the technology is grounded in research and in science rather than being sensationalized like it can be, because it to some might seem as like a technocratic approach to the climate problem.
You're absolutely right that communications and narrative very important in this. Any miscommunication, misunderstanding can derail the research, and it has happened actually in around this. In our approach, what we try to do is include and be honest and transparent. So the first thing we do is that we include in our what we do. We're hosting workshops across the country. Our target is 12 workshops in different universities, and engage people till talk about the whole day workshop, starting with what is causing this climate change. So it's a science, provide the scientific background, and then um, open some of the solutions that can solve the problem. We focus on decarbonization part, and also say these are the open issues that we need to have national dialogue, open national dialogue, and instruct those people who are getting trained in this, that talk to your friends and raise your voice, engage your public representatives in this process. When we go to brief members of parliament, we do not say this is the only solution. We see that there are a bunch of solutions that you need to investigate and make it your. We do have our national research labs, we have IITs, and they can take this research and adapt for the country. So we do not prescribe any particular solution. So these are the open solutions that we do have. And I think it is important to communicate or have honest and transparent communication. And it has to be inclusive at the same time. So we try to reach out to the bottom, the people who are getting most affected. And I think but at the same time, you have to understand, we are very underfunded. It's a small organization. We are trying our best, severely underfunded. But that's the process we have taken so far.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that approach. I think also, you know, having noticed the way the carbon dioxide removal technologies have advanced in India, I think India is starting to really, advance work in the biochar space and the enhanced rock weathering space. And I think a lot of that progress has stemmed from taking a co-benefits narrative alongside development. And I think especially with those two technologies, linking them to sustainable agriculture and empowerment of farmers, I think that has really, really sped up the work on that in India. So I think maybe that same approach could be applied to the climate intervention space as well, in terms of helping frame that research alongside foundational research that needs to be done on climate science and foundational data that needs to be built up to monitor our weather and our climate system. But yeah, another question that I had. Oh yes, you can go ahead and drop questions in the chat as well. Uh, I just have one last question, and then we can turn to audience Q&A. But in terms of all of these things that we've addressed, what is the Healthy Climate Initiative's complete set of approaches to addressing some of these gaps in India?
So, the part as I said earlier, the lacking awareness is a big problem here. And when I say awareness, it's not at the grassroots level, the public space, as well as political space, as well as that academic space. So what we have started doing is that we plan to do 12 workshops across the country involving universities and the IITs and other engineering institutions. The goal is to have about 2,000 people trained every year. And the idea is that from each of those 2,000 people should even go back and hub and spoke situation to their community, to the colleges, to spread the message. And that is a 5-year plan we are looking into. We are also talking to giving briefing to the members of the parliament to see that, engage in the policy in the parliament. So the idea is that sometime in the future that we want to introduce something called national cooling policy that would include, allocation of R&D and all the needs that involving climate intervention. We are also planning a global conference involving Global South next year, where we have all people from all walks of life, civil societies, academic institutions, and policymakers to be in one place. The goal is next year, we'll have this conference in Delhi to have that open dialogue. So ultimately leading to creating awareness among all across life, even in media, they need to have that narrative. Allocation of fund and the priority that it needs, and finally a focus on creating governance framework. So that's all these things in a 5-year term we are looking into. And finally, to get even bigger attention and spreading the message, we plan to do a walk climate march across India, 3,000-kilometer march from the south to north, and asking people from the globe to join part of this thing. There are a few people who will do the march, and engaging people across this throughout this march. So let's say 6 months of march, you have from 3,000 kilometers, and you have the people in different towns. You will have the town hall meetings, and then that way you can engage. And you are getting the media focused throughout the time. So these are the things we are thinking, and I think that the level of problems we have today, we need a huge involvement of public space here. Does it answer your question? So we have a huge ambition, small organization, underfunded, but we think that's what we need to move the dial on the positive direction.
Thank you, Soumitra. I think we can now move on to the audience question and answer segment. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, I had put one in chat, which is that the Marine Biological Institute in Goa has had a rather successful trial of upwelling in the Red Sea. Is that something that you could get the fishery industry and government to support when they want to scale it?
We have not come across. Let us stop offline and see how we can get involved in this. But no, I have not come across in that. But sounds pretty interesting. I know Climate Repair Lab is involved in that as well from Cambridge. Sir David King is involved in this. I'm aware of that. But now let us talk offline. I'll be very interested to learn about that. Any other question?
I guess while we wait for the audience, Partha, do you want to go ahead? You just unmute.
My name is Partha Majumdar. I know Soumitra for a long time. And I talk to him personal level, time to time, about this climate change, how it's going to impact. I think it's a really big challenge to educate the common people. So, and as you guys are already identified, the initiative needs to be taken at the government level, at the society, the community, and also how do we involve people, the common people basically. So they probably don't know, they don't understand what is climate is we're talking about. So more I think, like say we study in school, science, math, whatever, I think we need to introduce this climate subject in the school level so that people has got more chance to know more about this issue. Than even if say 1 or 2% of the population engaged from that introduction in the school, that is a huge, gain. So I think then automatically people will be interested to do for scientific research and engage in other activities. So maybe I don't know, it's a big challenge, what I'm saying, but that's something probably we can talk to the educators, we can talk to the political people, those who take the decision. So that's basically my comment at this point, because the biggest challenge is to introduce the common people into this particular, subject. So that's the comment basically from my end.
Thank you, Parthada.
Right. Could you also get everyone just to plant one tree by their door of their house and then talk to them about why it's a good idea? It's very small and very simple, but with so many people, it could be a lot of trees.
We do have tree plantation program involving indigenous people. So that would be an interesting idea to promote that one plant per person. That would be a good idea. We did not talk about our plantation program. We do have a very, in Chhattisgarh area, we have been working with the indigenous people. They have large scale of land which need reforestation. We have identified about 1,000 hectare land, and working with the people to do the reforestation in that area. John, you have been patiently waiting, John. John, please.
Let me unmute. Yes. One of the main problems I find you say to people, the planet's hot, why don't we cool it? They say, well, how are you going to cool it? And then as soon as you say, how are you going to cool it? They say, no, can't do that. That's not over my dead body. They are so afraid of climate intervention. Now, this is very common in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly every paper you say says there's a high risk from interventions, and particularly the one that's actually safest, which is stratospheric aerosol injection. I mean, a lot of research has shown just how safe it is. They've looked at every possible thing that could go wrong, and all the risks have been overstated. Everyone, but politically, it's considered just not acceptable politically, and that may not be true in the global South, although one knows of various organizations like the Hands Off Mother Earth, who've worked in all sorts of global South countries, Africa, for example, to try and persuade people that intervention should be off the table. And this idea that should be off the table is so dangerous when it probably it is our only solution. We've got to the time when emissions reduction just can't do the job, and even removal of CO2 is just too slow and expensive to expect it to work on the timescale we need. I mean, the Arctic is melting away, and the Greenland ice sheet is in real danger, imminent danger of a kind of collapse when the glaciers tumble down in avalanches. You just need a trigger like a small earthquake or a damp lake above flowing under the glacier, and down it will go. And this has been observed in the Arctic, how a damp lake under a glacier can speed it up. And I'm sure you've had this kind of effect in the Himalayas where there are damp lakes and something disrupts the blockage, and down it tumbles and you lose villages. So this is going to happen in Greenland. So it's really urgent we do something to refreeze the Arctic, and that's why I hope one of the reasons why we're having this conference in Cambridge with Sir David King and others organising it, which is next week. So I'm of course going to that, but we need a real campaign of persuasion that these interventions actually do a huge amount of good, and they do negligible harm if they're done sensibly. So that's what I'm suggesting, and I would love to support you if you did that.
Thank you, John. Yeah, we'll not have this conversation if it was 30 or 40 years ago when we committed to emission reduction. We'll not have this conversation. We are having this conversation today because of the urgency, because we do not have time. This is what the challenge is. The glacier is melting, getting too hot to live in certain parts of the world. And that is what the challenges are. And I think the public trust in this campaign, we have to generate public trust. That's what the goal of this. If you need to have that honest and transparent dialogue, do not have the time. That is what the challenges are. So that's why we have a massive, ambitious goal, even though we are underfunded. Time is very little. And I cannot agree with you more, John. You know that. So I'll leave it at that.
I also
Thank you.
I wanted to jump in with a quick addition to that comment. I think in order for public trust to be built up, you need local research on such topics, because I think a lot of that trust might be stemming from the fact that this research is not happening. They're not seeing familiar names, familiar institutions that they trust for their source of information. So I think, a big part of the problem is also the lack of research that's not happening in countries like India and other countries in the global south.
So just to respond to that, in our small capacity, we have started a glacier local research and trial with the IIT and Bright Ice Initiative to slow the melting, and we had a very good result. It's a local intervention, but we have a very good outcome. We showed that 58% melting, and we already have the person who did the environmental impact assessment, Nuzhat Kazi, and found no impact on the thing that we have done. So we need to do that local. We involve local people, and that's how we got to do that. Sure. Suvarna, then Nuzhat Kazi.
Thank you. Soumitra, was a nice lecture and very timely and very important messaging. So I wanted to thank you on that. I wanted to add to this discussion that many of the changes that we want to implement have to come in small ways, in smaller regions, one city at a time, and maybe, one village at a time. And if we can, I can agree more with you on, how we need to disseminate this information through the universities, through the teaching medium, through the research labs. And actually, many of the labs have some sorts of awareness in this topic. And I'm recently going to be speaking in a meeting for the Zoological Society of India. And I know that they have been facing, species extinction or, different kinds of species getting lost from the Himalayas and many other parts of India. And they are trying to put adaptation and mitigation to climate change in order to, safekeep their species. And this could mean putting, as you said, deforestation, but a large part of it has to be to stave off the emissions, the stave off the sunlight. And it's not only methods like the Bright Eyes initiative or the one that we worked with before on the HCI, but there has to be different ways of staving off that sunlight. And one part of it is to control pollution, other part of it to maybe make white paint, make the roads and landscapes in a way that they're more porous and they are not so absorbent of heat. Each and everything adds to that radiation. As you know and aware of the detailed radiation budget work that we have done for Arctic. So there has to be a combination of those things, and it has to be done at smaller level, tested just as you did the Bright Eyes and glacial test. Similar small things have to be tested throughout the nation. And this has to be done through the local government, through the local universities, through the local research labs.
Thank you, Suvarna. That's a very important observation. We need that local intervention, the local engagement. We need that part. The challenge here, is the time, and the situation is getting so worse that can we, save the population, save that catastrophic situation that can happen through this. And our goal is getting locally involved. For example, start with local intervention, like we have been doing for the glacial intervention, or we have been promoting local interventions like rooftops brightening, or the public institution or the road pavements brightening, so that I know these are non-controversial, low-risk intervention. So you can cool the area, urban heat problems, you can manage that. You can manage in India, particularly 90% people do not have air conditioning. Then you can manage that heat, but we got to be ready also that if the situation goes beyond that we can manage, then we got to be ready. And we need to focus on R&D. I'm not too confident that global north will come forward, and we should not actually, that to be rescued by global north. I think India, and the global south, who are affected of their no fault of their own. They did not cause this problem, and they are getting affected by this. They should come forward, take the leadership, and create, engaging people across India. I did not see that level of resistance that I see in the north. So, Kazi.
But to that point, see, we had the Green Revolution long back, which made the Punjab green, which made it very agrarian. So I have a lot of hope that if Indians put our mind to this, we can solve it.
I totally agree with you.
I want to intervene here.
Okay.
First of all, Soumitra, I like your presentation. It's wonderful. Very nice presentation and very informative. So I strongly believe that we don't have time and we cannot buy time. But if there is an intervention from the top, if we raise voice from the top, HCI is really doing wonderful job, and they have a really big objectives. And they are also working very hard on that. And I appreciate. And we are also supporting for to achieve their objectives. I want to tell the people here that we are doing small parts. Like Soumitra, we have recently initiated. I want to address to the Majumdar and I think Annie. We are doing a climate change workshop series for schools. Up to there. What is the climate change? What is their solution? And how individual can contribute, because we think a bigger NGOs and bigger politicians can do everything. But we want to tell school kids, small children's, how their individual contribution can be done, how they can contribute to, minimize the decarbonization, and they can use how they can transfer the uniforms, how they can go for the carpooling, how they can use the one bus, because nowadays for kids it is the strategy if their parents come with a big car, but if we teach them, if they come in a bus, that is the big thing they can contribute to the society, rather than they come with a big and prestigious car. So in this way we have in HCI and our organization have recently started the workshop series for schools to raise the awareness and to tell them the plantation, at least if one plant, that is the also individual contribution. This is from the moral level, and we strongly believe the voice should be raised from the top, and to give the contribution to financial, especially financial contribution to the research. Like Soumitra said, recently we have done a Himalayan trials for glacial melting. The results are very promising, but we are still struggling with the funding. We don't have the fund for this year. And if we will get the fund, and surely we'll come to logical conclusions. So I think we are facing some problems for the funding, for the research. This is a big challenge, and voice should be raised from top. And I strongly believe many NGOs like HCI, they are doing wonderful jobs, small steps they are taking for raising the awareness of climate change, to give some contribution, to do the plantation, to do offline and online workshops, seminars, and several research trials. Everybody is doing efforts, but I think the raise should be voice should be raised from top, because then if they give the support from the political level at higher level, I think then we are near to by the time. But right now we are taking whatever is in our control, we are doing that. And I appreciate for SCI is doing their efforts very well, and we are with SCI. Thank you.
Thank you. By the
Can I
way,
respond to that?
just 1 second. Nuzat and we are working on school children, started, proposing actually in Kashmir and Kathmandu public schools. That's we started doing that. So that's what he was referring to. Of course, we are doing other things with Himalayan Glacier together as well. Subarna, you got the last one, because we see that we have time. We don't want to take extra.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to say, first of all, great to hear Kazi, and thank you for the great work, Kazi. What I wanted to build on this is that the universities, like I remember when I was growing up, there were not a lot of programs that taught about meteorology or climate or, the long-term, short-term aspects of it and stuff. And we had to reach this subject through a lot of other things that we had to study. So there was no focus to make this a priority. And I think that's something that should be done at the university level, where people understand what research needs to be done, what solution needs to be done, and how that can be improved. And I totally agree with you. It has to be a national mandate to do that. And perhaps we can reach out to the stalwart scientists, the emeritus scientists in the country, who can take this as their message to the government, to the highest powers.
Thank you, Shwarna. So this is almost the end. Any other question before we give it to the host, Rituraj Hokan? So I would make a closing remark before I give it to Rituraj. I hope it will not take more than more than 30 seconds. So this climate crisis is not tomorrow's problem. It is today's emergency. India and the world stand at a tipping point. We must act not just by cutting emissions, but by deploying life-saving local intervention and preparing for future risk and galvanizing the political will to protect those most vulnerable. At HCI, we are a small team, but we are building a growing national network with one ambitious mission: to regenerate a healthy climate and make the future safer for the next generation. But we can't do it alone. Your support, your voice matters. This is India's moment to lead with wisdom and justice and with result. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Soumitra. Thank you, Arushi, for the wonderful interactive conversation. I think all of us learned a lot. We had just so many great questions coming in from the audience and so many comments and insights, which has added to the webinar. I have been a climate activist for over 12 years now, and I would say that in India we are doing a lot of things. We are planting a lot of trees. We are doing a lot on education, right from the middle school level for so many years now. But obviously, we are not able to stop the planet from warming, and people all over the world are doing it as well. We are not able to stop ecosystems from collapsing. I live in Assam, in the Eastern Himalayan region, which is where we are, it's one of the most biodiversity-rich areas, and we are seeing a lot of species being pushed into extinction every year. Indigenous communities who live here and are very inherently connected with the biodiversity around us are losing so many aspects of their culture, their food. And all this is pointing to a catastrophe that is going out of hand, and that is why we need to look at climate interventions, especially to save lives. As we are saying, we are alternating between heat waves and floods in my home state in Assam, and this is not good. It's worsening every year. So thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Soumitra, you need to enable screen sharing. I think it is disabled right now. Just a quick minute that will help me share a QR code for Healthy Climate Initiative. I hope you can see it. So this is the donation, and you could also go to Healthy Climate Initiative website to engage with us more and continuously. We are going to have a series of webinars in the next few months as well, and me and Soumitra will be meeting up in Kolkata in a few days next week, along with a few others, to brainstorm on the conference. So a lot of things are happening, and we are counting on your support. Thank you very much.